Happy fall, y'all. I woke up this morning to chilly temps here in South Texas, and I thought this would be a great excuse to do a favorite fall soups video. I have lots of new subscribers. Welcome, everyone. So you might not have seen a lot of my soup recipes from the past couple years. In fact, really soon here, I'm going to be releasing a soups cookbooklet that features 37 of my soup meal in a jar recipes. They're all compiled into one digital download. I'll talk more about that in a bit. Now, all 5 of these fall favorite soups start as meals in a jar, and most of them are just add water meals. So pretty simple to prepare, pretty easy, but they are not lacking in flavor, that's for sure. All right, now if you'll notice, most of the ingredients that I'm showing you here are the Thrivalist brand, and that's because I used to sell that. Now they have gone out of business, but don't let that stop you from making my recipes. You can use any brand you have, just use your favorite brand, or you can use your own home freeze-dried ingredients if you have a freeze dryer. That works great as well. Now this first recipe was given to me by my friend Gina from church, and it's for a white chicken chili. Y'all, this chili recipe is fantastic. It's perfect for the fall. I am making a quart-sized jar of this because I wanted to feed all 4 of us. You can easily cut this recipe in half, put it in a pint-sized jar if you don't need this much food. Other than the sour cream and the cream cheese powder, the rest of these ingredients are kind of normal for chili. Now I'm including 2 kinds of beans in my recipe. I'm using the pinto beans and the refried beans. You don't have to use both. You could use one or the other. If you don't have either of those, the Thrivalist black beans would be wonderful in this too. It just gives, a different color. A lot of the ingredients in here you'll recognize as just normal ingredients you would put into chili. Well, maybe not the chicken, but this is a chicken chili, so it's got to have chicken in it, right? Yeah, so the rest of these seasonings are just gonna round out the flavor and give you a wonderfully flavorful broth. I will say this, there's just so much room in a quart-sized jar. If you want more substance to your chili, like if you want it thicker, what you can do is you can store this alongside another jar and just fill that jar full of beans. If you add more beans to this, you will stretch this farther. If you're going to store this for the long term, go ahead and put an oxygen absorber in there. And this is what you would be storing on your pantry shelf. Once again, it's a very simple, just add water recipe, so it makes it ideal for gifting. If you try this recipe and you like it, you could also make 3 or 4 of these at a time. You kind of set up an assembly line process, make several of them at a time, that way you have them if you need them. I'll include my full recipe in the video description box below. When you're ready to prepare it, go ahead and get out a large soup pot. I used my Dutch oven here. And you'll just empty the contents of your jar into your soup pot, and then you're just going to add water. And that's all there is to it. It's another very simple recipe. It's a just add water recipe. I added 7 cups of water to my chili because I like it with a lot of broth. If you don't want that much broth, cut that back to 6 cups. Your seasonings should still be fine. Now, I did forget to include the chef's choice in my recipe, so I added it here, but I'll make that correction in my recipe notes in the video description box below. Go ahead and bring this to a boil. And then once it reaches a boil, you'll turn down your heat to maybe medium-low. I did maybe 3.5 out of 10 on my stove. And then I covered it and I simmered it for 20 minutes. Basically, you're just wanting your beans to get tender. My beans were tender after 20 minutes. Every once in a while, just come along and give this a stir and make sure nothing is sticking to the bottom. After 20 minutes, you'll want to taste test to make sure your seasonings are good and to make sure that your beans and your chicken are tender. Now's a great time to add some fresh ingredients. I have turned off my stove, so the heat is off, and I'm adding a couple Texas-sized spoonfuls of sour cream. Now this is optional, but I think it's fantastic. Also, I do recommend adding some true lime packets. I added 2 packets into my chili. You don't have to do this, but I think the acidity from the lime cuts through the creaminess and it's just wonderful. You can also use fresh lime wedges. My family likes to serve this white chicken chili over some corn chips or some Fritos. So that's how I'm doing this today. And also, we like to garnish with another dollop of sour cream and some fresh cilantro, some lime wedges. I think avocado would be amazing. But isn't that lovely? It's such a pretty soup. I really, really think you guys are going to like this one. The corn in here provides a really nice balance to the chicken and the beans. It's sweet, it's crunchy, it's wonderful. You can see the pinto beans, the corn, the chicken, the green chilies, and that wonderful creamy broth. It is fantastic. Yeah, this chili is just one of those recipes that once you try it, I think you're gonna be like, where has this been? It's so tasty. It's really comforting, super satisfying. You can add extra things to it or make it just like I've written the recipe. So good. All right, this next one is for tomato basil soup. I think this is a classic recipe. Lots of people love their tomato basil soup. My mom made it when we were growing up, and she always served it with a grilled cheese sandwich. And most of my childhood, she kept a sourdough starter going, and she named it Barney. So she would make Barney, which was our homemade bread, and then we would have fantastic grilled cheese sandwiches along with the tomato basil soup. This one is so yummy. I'm starting with just a 1/2 pint jar because I only needed about 3 servings of this, but I'm going to suggest y'all use a pint-sized jar just because I didn't actually put the optional thickener into the jar, and if you use a pint jar, you can fit it in there. These are the powders that I use to make this a really nice, rich and creamy soup. I'm going to use 2 kinds of tomato powder in here. The first one is our Thrive Life tomato powder, and the only ingredient in that is tomatoes. And the second is our tomato sauce, and it has some extra seasonings in there. It's really yummy. Just a few chopped onions. Now I'm going to suggest you use freeze-dried herbs here. The freeze-dried basil from Lighthouse is so good. It's not bitter at all. It's a wonderful basil. Okay, and then here are the seasonings. If you put chicken bouillon powder, it's the equivalent of putting some chicken broth into your soup. So I suggest you use that, as well as some salt, pepper, garlic. A little bit of cayenne will help deepen the flavor, and you do need a little bit of sugar because there's so much acidity in this soup from the tomatoes. That'll help round out the flavor. So this is the jar you could keep stored on your pantry shelf. And it's so simple to make. It's a just add water recipe. It's as simple as opening a can of soup that you bought at the store. But with these, you know exactly the ingredients you put in there. These are wonderful jars to keep on your pantry shelf. You'll just add about 4 cups of water to this and give it a good stir. You'll put this on about a medium heat. I wouldn't do any hotter than that just because it's got those cream powders in there. So bring it to a boil over medium heat. Give it a stir occasionally. Those little lumps that you see at the beginning will dissolve as you heat the soup. Once you've reached a boil, you can turn down your temperature just a little bit, probably about a medium-low, and just simmer this for about 10 minutes. Now here is that optional thickener I was talking about. This is how my mom thickened her tomato soup. she used instant mashed potato flakes. They are neutral in flavor and they're instant, so it thickens this instantly. I love them. I think they're wonderful in here. They give just a little bit of texture to your soup and they thicken it up really nicely. I also like to add just a little additional heavy cream. You don't have to do that, but I love cream in my soups. If you watched my videos, you know how much I love heavy cream. So this is the texture that you'll have. It's a nice, smooth soup. If you don't want to use those instant mashed potato flakes to thicken your soup, I suggest you use some of our bechamel sauce powder. Instead of adding the heavy cream and the butter powder, you could add 1/4 cup of our bechamel sauce, and that would help to thicken the soup instead of using the mashed potato flakes. Now I served it up in that beautiful bowl, but I ended up giving that to my daughter, so I took pictures with a different bowl. But I went ahead and made my grilled cheese sandwich, and while I made that, the soup did thicken up a little bit more. I like to top this with just a little bit of extra basil. It's also good with a swirl of extra virgin olive oil. It's a really nice soup. Yeah, y'all, I just think that tomato soup is one of those classic soups that if you like it, you really like it. And for me, it reminds me of my childhood so much. When we lived in Virginia and my brothers and I would go play in the snow, my mom, she was so amazing. She would have some sort of homemade soup bubbling away on the stove. And tomato soup was just one of the ones that I remember her making for us. I loved her grilled cheese sandwiches, and a lot of times we would dunk them in that soup, or we would tear them up into little chunks, almost like croutons, and float it in the soup and eat it that way. That's probably still my favorite way to eat the tomato soup. All right, this next recipe is for sausage tortellini soup. And once again, it's delicious. It's perfect for the fall. It's nice and hearty. These shelf-stable tortellini that I found at Walmart, mine are filled with cheese, but you could also get the ones that are spinach and cheese. And they work great in this meal in a jar. So feel free to customize this according to your tastes. Put whatever veggies you like in yours. But y'all, this is a great soup for the fall. Now I am going to do an assembly line process because I want to make a quart-sized jar of this and a couple of, well, I ran out of pint-sized jars, so I'm going to use the 24-ounce jar. But those are basically going to be kind of like a half recipe. That one package of tortellini, that shelf-stable tortellini, that made all 3 of these jars. That's just one package. The measurements I'm giving you on the screen are going to be for the quart-sized jar. So if you're wanting to do pint size, you could just cut those amounts in half. Now I'm going to add some seasonings to this. I am going to add some red pepper flakes here. It's not going to make it too spicy. It's just going to give a little bit of background heat. And I also like to include some oregano and some basil. And if you're like me and you think that dried basil is bitter, then I suggest you try some freeze-dried basil because I think it's much better and I like the Lighthouse brand. Now I'm going to try and speed up some of this so you don't have to watch me just do the same thing over and over. But I did want to show you that this is how I usually do my assembly line processes. I just line up the jars and do all of the same ingredient in each jar. So I put the tomato sauce in there. If you want to, you can use tomato powder. If you do, I would include just maybe a teaspoon of sugar, some Italian seasoning, and some milk powder as well. I included some beefy Espagnole sauce. You don't have to do that. If you want to make this a creamier soup, what I would do is instead of the Espagnole, I would include some bechamel sauce, then add some heavy cream powder to this, maybe 1/4 cup or so. Every once in a while you might shake down the jars and settle those ingredients. Now I'm adding some sausage crumbles, and I did put those in the blender and I pulsed it to make the size of the sausage pieces smaller. I think it refreshes better and I like the mouthfeel a lot better. I'm including some garlic here. All right, and here come the vegetables. Now, this is what I was saying. This is totally customizable. You can put whatever vegetables you want. I'm including some butternut squash because I wanted to use up the rest of my can. I love zucchini in this recipe. It's really mild and great. I've got kale going in here. You could use spinach or broccoli, whatever you like. I'm putting tomatoes because I've got a tomato-based broth. And I'm also going to do onions and celery and carrots. And that's just what I usually put in like all of my soup, the mirepoix. But like I said, that's customizable. I also put the celery in the blender because my husband doesn't like celery. Well, my husband doesn't think he likes celery. So I put it in the blender and then it cooks up so nicely that he doesn't even realize it's in there, but I still get that flavor from it. So here are the jars that you could keep stored on your shelf. I've got a friend who's having surgery, so I'm going to take her one of those jars, and another friend who's feeling under the weather, so I'm going to take her the other jar. All right, now, when you're ready to make this, it's a super simple recipe. All you're going to do is add water. I'm actually going to make one of the smaller jars. That will fit in a pint-sized jar, the recipe that I did. So whatever size jar you make, you need to add just shy of 2 of those jars full of water. So if you're using a quart-sized jar, you'll fill it up once and not quite twice. If you're using a pint-sized jar, fill it up once and not quite twice, and that would be the correct amount of water for you. You'll just give it a good stir, crank up the heat, let's get it to a boil. You'll just want to stir it occasionally. You do have a little bit of Parmesan cheese in there, and there's pasta in there, so you just want to make sure it's not sticking. Once it comes to a boil, you can turn down your heat to probably a medium or so. You want to keep up the boil, so maybe I think I ended up at a 4.5 out of 10 on my stove, and I just simmered it for about 20 minutes. In that amount of time, the carrots will be nice and tender, the rest of the veggies should be tender, and that tortellini, you actually don't want that al dente, okay? You want that nice and tender, good and cooked. So give it a taste, and you can adjust the seasonings at this point. I added just a bit of salt. Now, if you are wanting to add something like some fresh heavy cream, now's a good time to do it, just right before you serve it. And all I like to put on top of this is just a sprinkling of some more Parmesan cheese. I mean, you could add fresh basil, whatever you like, but that's it. How about that? I mean, it's really easy, right? It's really quick, it's really simple, and the soup is so full of flavor. It's really delicious. If you don't want to use the sausage crumbles, I think this would be great with some grilled chicken dices. Or you could use the ground beef instead of the sausage crumbles. Or you could do this without any of our proteins and just maybe add a can of some navy beans or cannellini beans towards the end of the cooking process. I think that would be great as well. These little shelf-stable tortellinis, they really are delicious. These that I bought, they're stuffed with cheese. And I did see that they had some stuffed with spinach and cheese as well. But yeah, this soup is really comforting. I like to serve this with maybe some crusty bread or a side salad. But it's just great. It's easy and yummy. This next recipe is way up there on my list of fall favorite soups. I mean, not only the name, right? It's so appropriate, but y'all, the flavors are, it's like a hug in a bowl. I think y'all are going to love this one. This is going to make about 3 or 4 servings. 3 if you're just eating this, if this is your main dish. 4 or maybe 5 if you are going to serve this as a starter or before a meal. And one of the really cool things about working with freeze-dried ingredients is the fact that they powder up beautifully. So if you're wanting a soup that's going to have a velvety, smooth texture, instead of storing the chunky ingredients and then blending hot soup, you can blend it beforehand and store the powders in a lot smaller container. So all I'm doing is putting the ingredients for the soup into my blender, and I'm going to let that go for probably 30 seconds or so. It kind of depends on how powerful your blender is. Mine is just from Walmart. It's a Ninja, and I probably blended that for 30 or 45 seconds to get it good and smooth. You want those ingredients to be nice and powdered. And then I put them in the bottom of a pint-sized jar, and I'm just going to add some powdered things to the top of it. Some butter powder and some bechamel sauce powder and a little bit of kosher salt. That bechamel sauce is not only going to give it flavor, but also help it thicken up a little bit. All right, and I've got heavy cream powder, cream cheese powder, and here's a little bit of that pourable brown sugar. I'm leaning into the sweetness. That's going to pull out the sweetness, a little bit of that butternut squash. And then the chicken bouillon is going to pull out those savory notes. And just a little pinch of cayenne is really all you need. It will not make it too spicy. It's just going to deepen the flavor there. That's all there is to it, guys. This makes a great gift because it's a just add water recipe, and you're going to have a delicious butternut squash and pumpkin soup in about 10 minutes. It's really quick. And when you are ready to prepare this, it's super simple. All you have to do is get out a medium-sized soup pot and empty the contents of the jar into that pot. And then you're going to add probably about 3 cups of water. I added 3 cups here. If you want a thinner soup than what you see at the end of this video, you could probably do 3.5 cups or 4 cups. It's totally up to you. You'll bring this to a simmer over medium heat. And then now is a good time to add some pumpkin. 1/4, 1/2 cup, something like that. You could make this with only butternut squash. It's good like that. You could make this with only pumpkin. You could add that whole can of pumpkin if you don't have the butternut squash. This is a great soup. But I like the combination of both, and I'm calling it autumn squash soup because this is kind of my version of what Panera has, that restaurant Panera. And what they do is they sell the soup in these single serving little containers at Walmart. And I read the ingredients on the back of the container. And this is my version of it, a copycat version. So you can go ahead and taste that and see what you think. Adjust if you need to. That's also where you could add some more liquid if you think this is too thick. I think it's perfect. I think it's so perfect. But, I mean, that's totally up to you. Taste and texture, it's a very personal thing. So do what you think is best there. I like to top this with some pepitas. Those are pumpkin seeds. And just some freshly cracked black pepper. That's about all it needs. But gosh, isn't that gorgeous? Just look at the color. I think this is such an elegant soup. This is kind of fancy enough to serve to guests, even at a holiday gathering. I think this would be brilliant on a Thanksgiving table. But it's also just easy enough to where you could make this just for your family or just for you, on a Tuesday night. It's very easy. You only have to simmer that for about 10 minutes and then you're good to go. This last recipe is inspired by our years in Louisiana. My family lived there for about 4.5 years. We fell in love with the food. We fell in love with the people. And my mom was blessed enough to get a recipe for gumbo from some friends of ours from church who had a restaurant. So thank you to Mrs. Stonecker, who gave us her recipe for spicy chicken gumbo. Feel free to put whatever kind of meat you want in yours. I just saw the other day that Mountain House has come out with a freeze-dried andouille sausage. That would be incredible in here. And you can add fresh meat to it when you cook it if you want. Whatever you want to do there is going to be great. You're going to need some Cajun spices to make this gumbo. Y'all, this recipe is spicy and it's delicious. I think you're going to love it. We're going to start with a quart-sized jar because this is going to give you 4 generous servings of gumbo. And into the bottom of the jar is going to go an entire cup of celery. Now I like to crush this a little bit so you get some varied sizes in there. And then you need a cup of any kind of our freeze-dried chicken, half a cup of our chopped onions, there goes that garlic, and then some green bell peppers. Now I do like to snap those into pieces to just get more in the jar. Give your jar a shake, settle those ingredients. You're going to need an entire tablespoon of both Worcestershire sauce powder and chicken bouillon. And I really like that Worcestershire sauce powder that I get on Amazon. I'll link that below. And here is our Cajun seasoning. So I'm going to use some Trinity Shake, the Cajun 2-step because it's so good, and then some Tony's. And then I've got some freeze-dried thyme. Now this salt and pepper I'm going to say is optional. I love it, but if you're a little salt sensitive, you can just add salt and pepper to taste later. You'll need a couple of bay leaves. And into a little snack baggie, you'll need to put 1/3 cup of flour because we need to cook that roux before we add the rest of the gumbo ingredients. So you need to keep that flour separate and in a baggie at the top of your jar. So here's our jar of gumbo. Now there's only so much room in a quart jar. So I'm going to add some extra protein, some leftovers from my fridge at the end of cooking, but I like a lot of meat in my gumbo. Now you can always store an extra jar of chicken if you want to add more freeze-dried meat. And whenever you're ready to prepare this gumbo, you'll need to get out a large, heavy-bottomed pot or like a Dutch oven, and you're going to need to put 1/3 cup of oil into the bottom of it. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio, 1/3 cup of oil and 1/3 cup of flour. And that is going to make our roux, which is the base for this gumbo. So you'll go ahead and give this a whisk. You'll want to combine that flour and get it on medium heat, but not higher than that because the roux will tend to burn on you, and that's the worst. If you ruin the roux, you have to start all over, and that would be sad. So don't do that. Leave it at a medium. Go ahead and add some hot water to your jar and start refreshing those ingredients. You can add some water, use a spoon, stir it down, and add more. Go ahead and add as much water as you possibly can fit into that jar. And then you can just set that to the side and let it refresh. It needs to refresh for probably 15 minutes, which is perfect because you've got to make your roux. Once it starts to bubble on you, you're going to need to set your timer for 15 minutes. And you really can't walk away after that point. So go ahead and get about 6 cups of water in a pitcher or something right by your stove and have that ready. Because this process, it takes a while and you have to stand the entire time at your stove, but it's so worth it because the results are amazing. So when it gets to the color of butterscotch, make sure it's at a medium low. And when it gets to the color of dark chocolate, then it's ready. All right, now you can go ahead and open up your jar and add your jar to the pot of roux. Now, be really careful because you're adding something with water into something that is really hot oil. So just stand back. Don't get injured. Go ahead and saute that for probably a minute, and then you can add your liquid. I should have added hot liquid. I just added cool liquid to that. You need about 6 cups. Give it a stir. Go ahead and add some Louisiana hot sauce. I had run out of my Louisiana hot sauce and I ended up adding some Cholula, but it works great. It's yummy. You'll want to return your gumbo to a boil, and it's got to simmer for about 15 minutes, maybe 20. And I like to cover this and just let it go. It just needs some time for the vegetables to cook. And you can come along every 5 minutes or so and stir it. And by the way, now's a great time to make your rice. Boy, y'all, it smells so good. It's that really dark brown color. It's just so different. This is a completely different, unique kind of soup, and it's spectacular. If you've never tried gumbo, oh, you're in for a treat. Now, optionally, you can add some more proteins. So I just added some rotisserie chicken that I had in my fridge. It's great in there. And then that is just frozen shrimp. I put it in frozen. I know it's going to cook quickly in this really hot soup. So yeah, add whatever you want to add. I suggest some andouille sausage or any kind of smoked sausage. You could just cut it into coins and add it in there. Heat everything through. I probably cooked that shrimp in that hot, bubbly soup for maybe 5 to 7 minutes until I knew it was cooked through. And then just go ahead and give it a taste, adjust your seasonings. I didn't add a thing. I thought it was perfect. And you can go ahead and serve that up. Now, I don't know if y'all realize this, but gumbo is the star, okay? Gumbo is supposed to be served with rice as just like a garnish. You know, a little bit of rice on the side. I just used some rice that I already had cooked. I had some scallions growing out back, so I went and got those and chopped them, put them on the top. I just think it's so pretty. Now, for some reason, my roux split. It's separated, and that's really never happened before. I think it's because I added the cold water to the soup instead of hot water. So if that happens to you, don't worry about it. It's going to taste amazing. It looks a little bit funny, but it tastes wonderful. When we lived in Louisiana and we would have gumbo for dinner, it was just like such a big deal. We loved it so much. There's several Cajun dishes that are my favorites from when we lived there. Gumbo is one. Dirty rice is another. I will link my recipe for dirty rice down below. But y'all, this recipe is so good. Yeah, even though this one is a bit more time consuming than the other ones, because of that homemade roux, it is worth it. Authentic Central Louisiana gumbo is like nothing else. It's rich and savory. It's spicy. It's really, really special. Well, okay, y'all, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this compilation video. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I am going to release a soups cookbooklet. It's all my soup recipes from both cookbooks, plus the ones that have come out since those were published. I'm also including my sauce mix recipes in there since some of my soup recipes call for those as ingredients. If you're interested in soups for this upcoming fall and winter, be sure to check it out. It's only going to be available as a digital download right now, like as an ebook, but you could print it out if you needed to. Exciting update, y'all. I finished the cookbooklet. I will link to it below. It is available for purchase on my website. It's only $6.99. All right, here's your verse of the day. It's Romans 5:1, and it reads, "Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ." All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. And until next time, y'all take care and keep thriving.